Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brad from Lone Wolf, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you the answers, or the better answers, to the question I posed in the last video. Now, you may remember the last video I gave you a survival scenario, and I gave you a situation and a load of equipment on this table in front of us, and you had to decide what was going to be going and what was going to be staying. Just as a quick recap, two people were going to be going off to the town to go and try and get help, which is about 32 kilometres or about 20 miles away, and the decision you had to make as a team was what equipment were the two people going off going to take, and what were the two people stay, or what the rest of the group staying behind were going to keep with them. Now, I've had some interesting responses, to say the least, and today I'm going to give you the better answers as I see them. Now, there is no right or wrong answer, but these are the better answers as I came up with them. So the first selection of equipment that I'm going to show you is for the two people that are going off into town itself. First thing you've got to remember with these people though is they are inexperienced in the wilderness. So given that and the conditions that you're in, it's about 32 kilometers to the town. It's the middle of January and there is snow on the ground. I would anticipate these two being able to walk not much faster than 1 kilometer an hour. Something like this, it's better to underestimate how fast you can walk rather than overestimate, for several reasons. One of them being morale, and one of them being expenditure of your equipment. Given that you're only going to have about 6 hours of daylight to move, you need to think that they're going to be essentially constantly stopping and starting all the way through. So a reasonable speed of about 1 kilometer an hour. So it'd take them 32 hours to get to town. Bearing in mind there's only probably about 6 hours of daylight a day, so you're looking at 6, 12, 18, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, call it 5.5 days to get to town, based on 1 kilometer an hour. So that's the first thing you've got to consider. So with that in mind, the first thing that they will need to take will be a water bottle. Obviously it's going to help prevent, fill it up, it's going to help prevent dehydration. Even with temperatures below zero, you are still going to get dehydrated, so you need to drink plenty of fluids. Being water, of course, and being in these temperatures, you will need to keep it insulated somehow. We'll come on to that in a few minutes time. But water bottle most definitely goes with the two people that are walking to town. The cigarette lighter with no fuel. Cigarette lighter with no fuel. Not sure if it's going to stand up. Cigarette lighter with no fuel. Now, even though it's got no fuel in it, it can still produce sparks to get a fire going. Taking the matches may deprive the bigger group of a guaranteed fire. However, it is interchangeable, so whether you said matches, whether you said lighter, it kind of doesn't really matter. But taking the two people going to town, it's better for them to take the lighter because they don't need a guaranteed fire. Steel wool. Because you don't know the availability of dry tinder, you'll need to find a reliable way of catching a spark and get things lit. So steel wool can be done like that. You can actually obviously split steel wool in half like that and leave some of it behind. Depends on what you wanted to do, depends on whether you thought about that as well. Steel wool, that's probably going to blow off the table in a minute. Extra clothing not only adds warmth to your own personal body heat, but can also be changed out when clothing gets wet, and can also be used for bedding as well if you need it. That goes for everybody, of course. Okay, next up, small tub of Vaseline. A couple of things this can be used for. Being petroleum jelly, it is flammable, so you can get a fire going with it. And obviously it will hold a spark better than anything else. It's best if you mix it with cotton, something like that, to get a reliable spark and a reliable fire going. Obviously you can use it for different things as well, like hot spots if you start getting hot spots on your feet, and various different other things as well. So, and again, you don't have to take the whole lot. You can leave some behind if you need to, if you wanted to. Don't have to take the whole lot with you. Large tarpaulin. So the two people going into town will need some form of shelter. Now, because they're going to be on the move, they will need some sort of portable shelter. So that's where the large tarpaulin comes in. Remember that you've been at the crash site for about 10 days. So the likelihood is, if you've set up some sort of rudimentary shelter anyway, potentially using the wreckage of the plane. So it's best if the two people going into town take the tarpaulin. You can also use it to catch rainwater or snow or anything like that to turn it into drinking water, provided of course that you boil the water. I'm going to put that under the tap. I'm going to put the steel wool in my pocket just so it doesn't blow away. Okay, next up, the saw. In this case, a folding saw, naturally. Better choice than the axe. The saw will allow you to cut the wood easier and with less danger to yourself, because you're not swinging sharp metal objects all over the place. Remember that the group need you to get to town. You must get to town to get them to rescue. So if you start cutting off limbs and things, it's not a good idea. So the saw is a much better choice for taking for the two people going into town. Chocolate bars, they are far better going with the two people going into town. Remember, all this equipment at the moment is for the two people going into town. The chocolate bars are better in that they provide food, they provide energy without a lot of digestive demands on the body. Remember, there's only two of you going into town as opposed to the whole group staying behind. Okay, so the whole group staying behind are going to need a larger amount of food. Next up, a knife. Now, realistically, you should all be carrying a knife in the wilderness anyway, but in this case you can only find the one knife. You can only find the one knife. Better that goes with the two people going into town, as they're probably going to need it a bit more than the rest of the group. There is a proviso though, and I will come on to that a little bit later on. Okay, next up, is the first aid kit. Now, it's only a small first aid kit. It's only really designed for blisters and small cuts, but it's better that the two going into town take it rather than leave it behind. They're more likely to need it at some point. Okay, next up, compass. Now, without a map, it's next to useless, but you can put a basic bearing on it and it will stop you walking around in circles, stop two people walking around in circles, so you know roughly where the town is, so you set the compass and you keep walking in that direction. And last but not least, for the two going into town, is the telescopic walking stick. Useful to support your weight, Obviously you would need to share it and stop you from falling over. It can help you to get out for each item. Obviously it's telescopic, so it does get longer to a certain point. It can be used to help potentially fight off some wildlife. I don't think it's going to fight off a bear, but you never know. So that's the stuff going into town. Obviously there are a couple of other bits and pieces. I've had to take them off because the wind's blowing them all about the place. But that's the stuff going off into town. Okay, so that's the stuff being left behind. The stuff, sorry, being taken by the two going into town. Move on to the stuff being left behind with the bigger group now. First up, it's a small axe. The group will need a supply of wood in order to maintain a fire. It will be better off staying. The axe will be better off staying with the group, as they'll be able to clear the site and cut branches for ground insulation. An axe requires more energy to use than a saw, but as the bigger group is staying behind, there are more people to share the load. Okay, so that's one item staying behind. Second item is the bow with 4 arrows. Okay, remember, you have no outdoor experience and the bow is an unfamiliar weapon to you. Therefore, you are better off leaving it with the group. The group may be able to practice, they may be able to bring down some game if they needed to. But it's not really, if you don't really know how to use a bow, it's not something you should be using. It can be dangerous in the wrong hands. Newspaper. Okay, this is a bit old and a bit tatty, which is why it's brown. But newspaper can be used obviously to start a fire. It can also be used for insulation. You can roll it up, put it underneath clothing. It provides you a nice bit of insulation. Obviously, being newspaper, there's several pages, so you can split it and use it to wrap the bottle up to keep the bottle nice and insulated if you needed to. Certain things like that. Okay. This one I've had to pin down just for now, so. Next up is the flight plan. The flight plan has got no topographical features on it, so it's completely useless for you to navigate with on the ground. There's a broad area coverage, but nothing beyond that. That is the crash site there. That is your nearest town, which is 32 kilometres away. I'm going to use the Vaseline to hold that down. Okay, ice axes. Now the savvy amongst you might have recognised that there's 2 of these, so you can obviously split them up. One goes with the pair going into town, one stays with you. We are, however, at the moment talking about these as a pair. So they stay behind. They can be used as a weapon, an improvised knife, because obviously you've got a nice big sharp blade here, so you can use that as a knife. And it can also be used to break ice on a pond, lake, river, anything like that, so they stay behind. If you decided to split them, not a problem. Haven't got a problem with that at all. Okay, next up, matches. As I mentioned before, guaranteed way of getting a fire going, whereas the lighter may not be. The bigger group will need to have a fire going pretty much all the time. So the matches are better off staying with the group. It is, of course, interchangeable depending on what you wanted to say. Okay. One and a half kilos of food. Rationed out correctly, it should keep the group going for quite a while. The reason this stays behind is because the group staying behind is bigger, therefore they will need a guaranteed source of food. Okay, so that's why that stays behind and it doesn't go off with the 2 going into town. Besides which, the 2 going off into town do not need that much food, even if they are walking for 5 and a bit days. Okay, Next up, basic fishing kit. The abundance of creeks and lakes and ponds in the area, there are probably fish in there. Okay, so that's why the fishing kit stays behind. Again, although you may not have a lot of skills, it's not a hard skill to pick up. Now then, last but not least, and always the most fun and contentious point of this scenario, is the 1 litre of 60% proof vodka. Now, vodka has got many uses. Well, I say many, it's got a couple of uses. One of them being 60% proof, you can get a fire going with it, and also being 60% proof, it can also help sterilise any cuts or grazes that the group get. The other thing you can do with this, if you really wanted to, is you could empty this bottle out, fill it up with water, give it to the two going off into town. That way they have 2 litres of water between them, not just one. But of course the choice is yours. The greatest thing about this is, or the thing that I get most often is, why don't we just drink the vodka, get drunk, and have some fun? Yeah, great, if you want to die of hypothermia. Alcohol is completely useless in this situation. It doesn't warm you up. It actually, if anything, helps cause hypothermia. That's why in Scandinavian countries, hard liquor like vodka, like whiskey, things like that, is a very, very, very expensive drink, because people tend to fall asleep and then die of hypothermia. So that's the stuff staying behind. So stuff over here, with the exception of Vaseline, it's stuff going off into town. Stuff here is staying with the group. As I said at the beginning, there are no right or wrong answers with this. There are just better answers, and these are the answers that I came up with. Whether you agree or disagree, please feel free to comment in the comments. Hope that was a little bit of entertainment for you, and I hope you join me next time. Thank you very much. Bye.